Fresh airstrikes have been reported in Iran, Israel, Lebanon and Qatar as the war intensifies in the Middle East. Iranian officials said more than 1,200 people have been killed since the US and Israel launched its joint military campaign last weekend. Iran also continues to target Gulf nations with retaliatory strikes and today claimed to have hit a US tanker in the northern Gulf. On the sixth day of the war, explosions were once again seen across the capital Tehran and in cities across Iran. Israel ordered the mass evacuation of residents in southern Beirut as its offensive against Hezbollah continued. Iran continued to respond by firing missiles at its neighbours in the region. The UAE says it intercepted 6 missiles and 131 drones, but some did fall inside its territory. There were explosions reported in Qatar and Bahrain. A wave of missiles were fired towards Israel, and for the first time, Azerbaijan was drawn into the conflict with 4 people injured by a drone strike at an airport.
Once again, residents across multiple cities in multiple countries woke to the sounds of war. In Iran, explosions were reported in the cities of Sanandaj, Karaj and the capital Tehran. While in Lebanon, Israel is intensifying its campaign against the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah. More than 100 people have been killed in the operation so far. And this afternoon, Israel issued an unprecedented evacuation warning for the entirety of Beirut's southern suburbs, potentially affecting hundreds of thousands of people and prompting this call from the UN.
Sustained international solidarity and support to Lebanon is critical to ensure that displaced families, Lebanese and refugees alike, receive protection, assistance and dignity.
Across the region, Iran continues to strike back. Air raid sirens were heard in Israel overnight, while the UAE says it intercepted multiple Iranian missiles and drones today. And there are indications the conflict could be widening. Azerbaijan has accused Iran of terrorism and said it's preparing retaliatory measures after an airport in the southwest of the country was struck by drones this morning, injuring several people. Tehran has denied it was responsible. There are also reports Iranian Kurdish militias could be preparing to offer support on the ground to the US and Israel in an effort to help bring about regime change. The regime, however, remains defiant, today releasing this video of a missile launch and threatening to seek revenge on all those who joined the fight against Iran. Kate Farley, RTE News.
European countries are increasingly being drawn into efforts to shield Cyprus and Arab nations from retaliatory strikes by Iran, as Britain and Spain are sending military assets to the region. Ukraine also says it has been asked to help destroy Iranian drones. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said the chaos in the Middle East was caused by an erosion of international law and the use of force must be justified.
Relieved Spaniards landed at a Madrid airbase from Dubai overnight. Others arrived at airports across Europe on commercial flights that left the region through protected air corridors. As the UK committed to sending further Typhoon aircraft to Qatar.
We're sending 4 additional Typhoon jets to join our squadron in Qatar to strengthen our defensive operations.
London said it will deploy the HMS Dragon to Cyprus next week, and Spain has also sent a frigate to help defend its fellow EU member state, following an Iranian drone strike on a British base in Cyprus last weekend.
It was an isolated incident, so it was not a. I wouldn't say that it was an attack on Cyprus. Cyprus is not under attack.
Following a meeting of EU foreign ministers in Brussels, Europe's Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said countries in the region were worried about a possible civil war in Iran and that European vessels are being sent to protect trade routes.
The oil price, when it goes up, it actually benefits Russia to fund its war. And that's why we have to really push through the maritime services ban, that we can really curtail the shadow fleet and the oil revenues that Russia has to fund its war.
Because of Ukraine's experience shooting down Iranian-made Shahed drones fired from Russia, Gulf states and the US are asking for its help countering Iranian drones, according to President Zelensky, who promised to send interceptors in exchange for Patriot missiles, as the reach of this war continues to expand. Fergal Gallagher, RTE News.
Well, our Washington correspondent Jackie Fox joins us now from the Capitol building. And Jackie, debate is very much underway there around Donald Trump's powers to carry out these strikes, but he's unlikely to be reined in anytime soon.
That's right, Tommy. The debate over this operation has moved here to Capitol Hill. Last night, US lawmakers voted against a resolution that could have limited President Trump's ability to carry out further strikes on Iran. It mostly went along party lines. Democrats argue that President Trump did not have the authority to launch this operation in the first place. It's Congress, that's the only branch of government that can officially declare war. Now, today, the House of Representatives is due to vote on a similar measure. It's been brought by Representatives Republican Thomas Massey and Democrat Ro Khanna. You may remember them as the representatives who forced that vote on the Epstein files a couple of months ago. Now, US House Speaker Mike Johnson said that he has the votes to defeat this. So this is more symbolic. It's putting US lawmakers on the record when it comes to this operation. But it may not end here. If this conflict continues, you may see more resolutions, more measures here on Capitol Hill in the coming weeks, and Republicans may have changed their mind by then, especially if this affects more American lives and more American pockets with the rise in gasoline prices here.
Jackie Fox at the Capitol building in Washington. Thank you.
The first commercial flight to Ireland from Dubai since last Saturday landed at Dublin Airport last night with 384 passengers on board, many of whom were transiting through Dublin before going on to other European destinations. Another Emirates flight will land in Dublin this evening.
Emirates 163, very good evening, taxi November.
For the first time in 5 days, a plane from the Middle East landed at Dublin Airport. Emirates flight EK163 from Dubai touched down just before 11 p.m. Relatives of the Irish citizens on board patiently waited in the terminal before emotional reunions.
It's so good to be home. Thank you. It's just so good to be home. It was unreal. It was very unreal. I mean, you see these things on television, you see them in movies, but you just don't think you'll end up there yourself. You know, you're coming home from a holiday.
Totally surreal experience over there for a few days, you know, but yeah, just relieved to be home now. I was away for a couple of weeks before that as well, so it's been nearly a month without him, so just really looking forward now to getting back home and chilling out and getting back to reality then.
It was quite stressful, so it was, but no, we're delighted to be home, and we were very well looked after now. Yeah. But we were in the airport when it all kicked off, and that was the most traumatic part.
It's a great relief, yeah, but I think people over there are pretty safe overall. Yeah.
So were you stuck since Saturday?
I think Saturday night, yeah. I was actually in the airport when the explosion happened on Saturday night, so we got evacuated from there, so that was pretty tough, yeah.
The local authorities to evacuate over 20,000 people from the airport on Saturday evening. They bussed us all. We couldn't really complain.
After some criticism around the government's repatriation flight tomorrow, the Minister has defended the €800 charge.
I appreciate this is a cost, but this is in line with any other type of scenario where we've provided this type of consular assistance. There should be no reason why anybody cannot get a flight.
She appealed for Irish citizens who are stuck in the Middle East to register with consular teams so that they, like others last night and today, who wish to get home, can do so. Maggie Doyle, RTE News.
Well, Eleanor Byrnehill is in Dublin Airport for us this evening. So, Eleanor, are we expecting more Irish citizens to arrive in this evening and in the coming days?
We are, Sharon, following that first flight. A new flight is due to arrive in Dubai this evening. It departed at lunchtime Irish time, and it's due to arrive here within the next hour. It was due just before 7, and there's been a small delay. It's now expected at 7:35 with 350 passengers on board, no doubt worried and relieved to be leaving that situation. Another flight will depart Dublin this evening for Dubai. That's very much a repositioning flight with a small number of people on board, and then another commercial flight is expected back here with Emirates again tomorrow. The Minister for Foreign Affairs, Helen McEntee, says it's not surprising that some people heading to Dublin as a destination, that this won't be their final destination. They'll be travelling on to other places in Europe, but she did say that she understood that around 80% of the passengers on last night's flight were Irish, but we also understand that people are getting home in any way they can. And earlier I spoke to an Irish couple who'd managed to get on an early morning flight that departed Dubai for Manchester, and then they made their own way to Dublin.
I think we got out kind of just in time, Albus, just after getting messages that things are kicking off a little bit again in Dubai. We actually did a flip of the coin. Would we go for Dublin 2 a.m. or Manchester 2 a.m? And
Dublin one got cancelled.
The Dublin one got cancelled in the end. It was by look of the coin that we went for the Manchester one, and that was the one that went out. So happy out. Yeah.
Now, the DAA says that between 12 and 14 flights should be going from Dublin, between Dublin and the Middle East today, but airspace remains an issue. And we're also expecting the first repatriation flight from Oman to land here either late on Friday night or in the early hours of Saturday morning, and that is expected to have 280 people on board who will have made, some of them, the journey overland, which could take between 5 and 10 hours for them to get to Oman and onto that flight. Sharon.
Eleanor Byrnehill from Dublin Airport, thank you.
Now returning to the war in Iran, and earlier I spoke to the director of the Centre for Sustainable Development and advisor to 3 UN Secretary Generals, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. I began by asking him what he believed were the war aims of the United States and Israel.
The aims are to overthrow the Iranian government and to replace it with a pliant regime, a puppet state, if you want to put it that way. I don't think it's going to be achieved, but those are clearly the aims.
Can that be done through an air campaign? Because many would express a lot of skepticism around that.
I think almost every objective observer views what's happening right now as reckless and very unlikely to succeed in the terms of those objectives. So this is not well thought out. It's very violent, it's very dangerous, but it's very unlikely to succeed.
And why now? Because we've heard suggestions from the US Secretary of State that the US was actually influenced by Israel on this, and I know Donald Trump has contradicted that, but why now?
Well, we should start with the fact that Netanyahu said this is a 40-year dream for him. Israel has been, for 30 years at least, provoking this war. It's tried repeatedly. It tried last year with the bombing campaign last year. It tried again this year, and apparently, I don't know the inside story, but the one that's most credible is that it says Mossad got information that the Iranian leadership was going to be meeting, supposedly about the negotiations that were underway, by the way, which makes it all the more ironic and barbaric in my view. And then they conveyed that to the CIA, said we could kill all of them now. That was conveyed to the CIA, that was conveyed to the White House. The White House, Trump cleared it, and they did the bombing. So it apparently started some days or weeks before what was actually planned with the full forces in place.
Over the weekend, you expressed hope that other countries would tell the United States and Israel to stop. Are you still holding out that hope?
I am thrilled that Spain has done so clearly. Ireland is a great leader for peace, as a great proponent of the UN system, as a neutral country, can do and should do the same. I'm glad that other EU countries are saying that when Trump said, we threatened Spain with retribution, the other EU countries said, no, but we hang together.
But Professor Sachs, you will know that many ordinary Iranians actually welcome what's happening now, and they are crying out for regime change.
Well, there are also millions of Iranians in the streets that are crying out for their lost religious leader who was just brutally assassinated. And this way of behaving is the worst kind of barbarism that is going to send the world into a profound economic crisis, if not global war. So we are not.
Many will also say that these. I'm sorry to cut across you.
Sure. We are not barbarians, which say we don't like them, so we violate the international law. We violate the UN Charter, which says, Article 2, Paragraph 4, no nation may use force or the threat of force against another sovereign country.
Well, and Iran has been accused of using force against its own people. UN or human rights organizations have criticized it as a brutal regime. Right. It's been accused of killing thousands of its own people just a few weeks ago at the start of the year.
By the way, just on that, so that people really understand, our Treasury Secretary, who's a bit of a thug, said on January 20th, 2026, in Davos, and everyone can look it up online, that the U.S. aimed to crash the Iranian currency, to make the people suffer, and to bring them out onto the streets. And when they came out on the streets, Bessent said it's going in a very good direction. He called it economic statecraft. People should understand how evil this really is, that the U.S. went out of its way to make the Iranian people suffer. And we have a Treasury Secretary. We have a Treasury Secretary that is so amazingly straightforward, let's put it that way, that he explained all of it, and everyone can watch. Is this the behavior of a civilized country? No.
What would you say to those who would point out that Iran has been a malign force in the Middle East for quite some time? Even now, we're seeing Iran attacking its neighboring countries.
Well, when it comes to malign forces, Israel has made more wars in a greater distance and committed a genocide against the people of Palestine in this past year. So there's apparently a race for who is the most malign and the most barbaric. I would say Israel's genocide is absolutely reckless, and we should recognize it.
What's the solution here, then, to leave the regime in place?
Of course. If you have a problem, you go to the United Nations or you go to diplomacy. You don't go to war like this. This is barbarism of the worst kind.
If this continues, and we're already seeing an impact on energy prices, we're also seeing Iran threatening the EU that it will pay a price. What do you think the longer-term consequences are if this continues?
If the war continues, the Strait of Hormuz will be closed. The oil prices will soar well above 100 euros per barrel. There will be a very deep economic crisis this year. And Europe will be one of the regions to suffer the most. So I just advise everybody, stop the killing, stop the barbarism, go back to the UN Security Council, which is our hope for survival.
Professor Jeffrey Sachs, thanks indeed for speaking to us on 6-1.
Thank you.